Hello there. Today we're working on a 2004 Honda CRV. We're going to be doing a starter today. Kind of what's going on with this car is battery's newer, but the starter every now and then fails to engage or slowly engages and can't quite get it to start. So we're going to go ahead and start replacing the starter on this one. It's kind of simple at first. Pretty much what we're going to be doing is the starter is located underneath this intake manifold. So the goal of this project is to get all this removed so we can access that starter, and I'm going to kind of walk you through what those steps are. So first things first, what you're going to want to do, since we are working with some electricity going down to the starter, and if we touch the hot wire to anything that's grounded out, it's going to arc. We're going to start by getting this battery and disconnecting at least the negative so we can't make that connection. First things first with that is you're going to need a 10 mil to remove these batteries. Always start with the negative first. That way, as you're not taking off this positive and accidentally hitting the metal here and causing an arc. So start with the negative and we'll go ahead and get this battery disconnected. As you can see here, I went ahead and took off the negative. I am going to go ahead and pull off this positive just to be extra careful. This type of lock on, it's just on a bolt, if you guys can see here. So it just sits on this bolt here. All you're going to do is wiggle it back and forth and it pops off. I went ahead and already loosen the positive battery cable, so we'll go ahead and remove that, and now I should be safe to go ahead and start working on this starter. So next thing is we're going to go ahead and pull this tubing. This is your intake tubing that goes to the air box here. What I'll probably end up doing, just to give me a little extra room, is I'll probably end up pulling off this air box along with this intake hose here. So I will go through and show you what all needs to be disconnected. To remove this air box, what you're going to do is we're just removing the top portion. You're going to need some pliers. Remove this hose clamp. Easiest way to get this off after you remove this hose clamp is take a screwdriver or some type of pry bar and you can slide it off. Or once you remove these little bolts, there's 5 of them. These are 8 millimeters. Once you remove these, you can pop this up and wiggle it off and it'll end up coming off from here. You'll also have to remove this. This is a 10 millimeter, just to loosen this hose clamp here, and so we can slide this whole piece off. Okay, now that the top of the air box is pulled off, like I said, I just went ahead and pried this a little bit. As I wiggled the top of it, it kind of just shifted this way and this ended up coming out. And with this loosened, the whole top pulled off. So now we're going to work on the rest of this intake here. So you're going to have this sensor here, which is just a push connect. You just push in and it should, it's a little harder with one hand, but should come off. Underneath that is going to be this hose. So for reference here, it's going to be this hose right here. You just need that to come off of this as well. And then you're going to take another 10 millimeter and you're going to go ahead and loosen this clamp to get that to wiggle off. If you need to, you can also pull off the sensor here to give you a little bit more room. It's another just push and remove and it'll end up coming out. So yeah, I will work on getting this off now and I will continue from there. Alright, now that we got this part of the intake off, as you can see here, it's just open and here's your intake here, your throttle body. So for this portion, probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of work from right to left here, working to get this intake manifold off. I'm probably going to start with doing some connectors. On that intake hose that we pulled off, this was the bottom hose I was talking about. This was the connector that was on top. Once you remove that, you just kind of pry on this, kind of like this top one, and it'll end up coming off. And then I loosened the clamp here, and it all came off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on getting this hose off here, this hose off here, just to give me some more room. And then I'm going to work on this connector, that connector, and this blue one right here. I'll work on getting those off, and then I'll kind of see where I'm at, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I went ahead and popped, where's that other hose? Here we go. This hose off and this hose off up on top. I popped them up and just moved them to the side. I next went ahead and pulled off the connectors, so those three I was talking about. It was this blue one, this black one, and then the bottom blue one. So I'm looking at this, and it looks like it's probably going to be easier if I won't go ahead and remove this electrical harness. You have one plug here going down to what looks like some type of sensor that's on the intake manifold. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but then you go to the fuel injectors and go ahead and unclip these. There's 4 of them. You just grab on the sides. There's going to be 2 push clips. Let me grab one here. There we go. As you can see, there's a push tab on that side, a push tab on that side. You grab both and then pull straight up, and then you can undo them. But I feel like that's going to be the easiest way. That way I can flop all this electrical over to the side here. That way it's out of the way. So we'll see what we can do by getting that off, and we'll go from there. So working with this electrical, pulling it off all the way over on this side. Just so you guys are aware, there's, like I said, 4 injectors that are up along the top. Also with the injectors, there's a 10mm bolt that holds this ground down, if you guys can see that. So there's a bolt that sits right there. It's a 10mm, it's a ground. And the thing holding on this plastic here is these little plastic tabs. The way it sits down is, I'll push it on, is it has a little shark tooth. It sits on these little metal clips, and it just slides on like that, and then you just pry up on here and pull straight up, and it'll come off. When you get to the far left here, I could not reach the sensor wire that was on here, the plug-in. I had to remove this to give me enough room to reach that 10mm bolt right there on the left-hand side. Once you release that, it will, let me pull this bolt off. I already loosened it. It loosens this sensor, which gives you enough room at that point to pull the plug. The plug is just push style. It's pointing at a horrible angle on the bottom, so you have to make sure that you have enough room. Once you do that, you can flop this over. Now that the wires are out of the way, this hose is free. You have access to those 5 bolts that hold the intake manifold on. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, the only thing that's still connected to this intake manifold as well are these coolant lines that are right here on the bottom. My goal, or at least my hope, is that I'm going to be able to pick this intake manifold up and flop it off to the side just to give me enough room for the starter. If not, we'll go ahead and take off those intake manifold lines, but I'm going to go ahead and start by pulling these 5 bolts, and we'll see how much room I have. Alright, so I got those bolts removed. They are 12mm, and there's 5 of them. There's 2 nuts and 3 bolts. As you pull this off, you should be able to wiggle it. I wasn't able to completely pull it. I'm going to go ahead and pull this hood latch. It's 3 10mm bolts. There's one right there. There's one underneath this latch. Well, 2 underneath the latch, but that's where they're located. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull this and see if that gives me enough room to flop this over to the side just so I can access the starter. Okay, so removing the hood latch gave me more room. It definitely did. It just doesn't give me enough room to slide this out because it kind of has to slide out at a weird angle. So you're going to pull this side and it's going to kind of come out at an angle, kind of like up and out. And unfortunately, I can't do that due to these throttle cables. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and prop them off here to give me some slack. And then I'm going to pull the 10mm bolt that's holding this one in. It's that bolt right there. I'm going to go ahead and pull that just to loosen these cables. Once that comes off, there's 2 coolant lines that I am going to have to pull. I was hoping I wouldn't have to, but I'm going to. So this one here on the left is pretty easy to reach, and that bottom one, once you have the intake manifold off some. So once I wiggle this off, I can't do it with just one hand, but once you wiggle it off, you have a little bit more room to reach those two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get those two coolant lines off, give me some more access with these throttle body, or with the throttle cables. I'm just going to release those two, and like I said, pull the 10mm bolt here. Then it should give me enough room to go ahead and slide this out and have access to that starter. Alright, so I went ahead and got the throttle cable loose, and I went ahead and pulled off the two coolant lines. Let me see if I can get some light down there. So as you can see, that right one and that bottom one, I'm trying to get my light set up here, that bottom one and then this one on the right. The only other thing I forgot is there is another connector right here. It's gray in color. It's kind of hard to see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the throttle. I'm going to go ahead and remove this intake manifold and show you guys what that connector looks like. There's that connector, even the wiring harness itself is actually held onto the intake manifold for like the radiator and stuff. It's a green clip, but I will show you what that looks like here. So I'm holding up the intake manifold. I went ahead and just dropped this side. As you can see right there, there's that clip right there that I got to pull off. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. After pulling off that clip, you can see down there, it's in green. That green piece, if I can get the focus again, that green piece down there is what's holding the wires to the throttle, or for the intake manifold. I got to get in there and get that off. It's kind of going to be a tight squeeze. There's not much room. What I'm going to try to do is I'm probably just going to cut it and get it to so where it'll still hold the wire later. But yeah, you got to get in there and get that removed, and then this whole thing should come out. Okay, so it's a little bit more of a pain in the butt than, you know, it probably should be, but there's those two coolant lines that I pulled off. So you have this one that's on the bottom, this one here that's on the side. When you get that off, you have this gray connector that's on the side that I showed you, and then there was the green piece that holds that cable. I ended up taking a pair of snippets and just snipping it. You can still put the wire in there, which will hold it. I mean, it's probably not the 100% ASC Master Certified way to take it off, but it was the easiest way to get it off. The last thing is you do have one plug that's on the bottom that you can't see on the intake manifold. So the intake manifold is this right here. This is the top, this is the bottom. On the back end of this thing, of this sensor, there's a plug. I wasn't able to access it until I pulled the intake manifold off to the right a little bit. Once I did that, I was able to unplug it, and then it was just wiggling it out. Like I said, the intake manifold kind of has to go out like this. You pulled this side up and straight up, and it comes out. I left the throttle cable attached. This is another vacuum line that goes down, but I left those attached and it worked. I just had to push this radiator hose off to the side to give me some extra room to pull it out because it was getting caught on the bottom of this. But it is out now, and as you guys can see, there is a starter. So the starter there has two wires attached to it. You have the actual battery cable wire that's going right there on top, and then you have on the right of that is this little tiny wire that you just end up pushing. It should just slide right off. It's not a clip or anything, so you should just be able to wiggle and pull. As you can see there, it just slides straight on. This right here, you got to pop that cap off, which I will do and show you what it looks like. So I went ahead and popped that cap off, and as you can see here, this is going to be a 12mm. After you get that off, if you want, you can pull this. These wires are held on to the starter. You can pull this bolt here. Looks like it's going to be an 8mm, but you can pull those off, and then the wires are off. Then your top bolt here is going to be a 14, and this one should be a 17. I will let you know for sure. So prior to getting a new starter in, this was that bracket I pulled off with that 8mm with that really long bolt that went into the back of the starter. You actually don't have to pull that. It prefers that you because it ends up coming with a new bracket on it. So it still, for me, was the easiest way to get it off. I would recommend just taking it off that way. Then you can get this clip off so much easier, so you can put it on that starter. So now we'll go ahead and just work on getting this baby installed. I'm going to go ahead and vacuum up some of that debris that's there. I don't know if you can really see, but there's some type of debris that's in there right now, and I'm going to pull it out. I'm not sure what exactly that is, but we'll see. I'm going to get it cleaned out, and then I'm going to get the new starter put in. Okay, so starter's back in. Again, this top bolt is a 14. This bottom bolt for the starter is a 17. This is the signal wire, so I just went ahead and pushed that on, and then this is your battery wire. I went ahead and tightened that down. That's a 12 millimeter. This back cable, just got to push it into the square here. Now it's locked in place. So now that that's all done, now it's going to be the fun part of reinstalling the intake manifold. So it's going to be the same way that we pulled it out. You're going to go ahead and stick this backside in first, slowly get it down. I'm going to work on getting this plugged in first, because that's when I have the most room. And then I'm going to work on getting the wire that this came out of just sitting in there. It really doesn't come close to anything. If you look down here, this is that wire right here that it's connected to. And it honestly doesn't even come close to the fans, doesn't come close to anything. But it's good just to have it still resting in there just so it's not bouncing around. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and get this wire installed on the bottom of this. So it definitely goes in a lot easier than it came out, but I went ahead and got it in. I got that bottom wire that was underneath here plugged in. I got the green, or the wire going through that green clip. Now I'm going to work on getting this bottom plug plugged in. What I'll probably have to do is lift it up a little bit again. I'll have to lift this up again just a hair so I can get it plugged in. Then I can get it setting on its in its resting place, and I can work on getting the coolant lines hooked up. So we'll go with that. Okay, so I got the coolant lines set up. So this is, again, just resting here. Got this side and lower coolant line put back on. My next project's what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the throttle body cable put back on. So, again, I pulled a 10 millimeter bolt from here. I'm going to go ahead and get that mounted, and then I'll get these pushed into the clip. What I ended up doing, though, to give me a little extra room, which you may do on your own, but I want to make sure that I talk about it, is this wire actually goes underneath this. So you just pick up on this, tuck these underneath, and it should look like this. This should be in front, and then I can go ahead and mount this so it's back in correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay. So I went ahead and got the throttle body, or the throttle linkage, hooked back up. Now I'm going to work on getting the hood latch put back on with 3 bolts. They're 10 millimeter. I'm going to get that, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'll get this plugged in. It's going to be this plug right here. I'm going to get it plugged in, and then I'm going to get it mounted with that 10 millimeter bolt back here. It's back here by my thumb. So I'm going to get that all plugged in this vacuum hose, and then I'll show you the rest of the electrical. Alright, hood latch is put back on. I went ahead and mounted this sensor here with that 10 millimeter bolt back there. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug it in here, vacuum line here. I'm going to go ahead and do this ground with the 10 millimeter bolt and plug in these 4 injector wires. Remember, these tabs just slide onto here, and you'll hear them snap, and then they're locked in place. Okay, so got the injector wires all plugged in, got that 10 millimeter ground wire, and the electrical on the intake is done. I am now working on getting the 5 bolts on for the intake manifold. I did not clip this part in yet, and the reason why is because I want to access this bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and get these all tightened down, and then this hose will sit just in these little clips right here. Okay, so this whole side is all put back together, so I went ahead and got the hose all lined back up, the bolts all in. Now I'm going to work on getting these plugs plugged back in. There's the lower blue one, which is there. Then there's this blue one and this black one. I'm also going to go ahead and reconnect these hoses. These we'll just push back on, so like that, and then this smaller one like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the electrical connectors put back on, and we'll go to the next step. Next is gonna be this intake hose. So it has the one sensor and then the hose to it. So bottom hose, sensor plug in, and it goes there. And then once we get those plugged in, it is a 10 millimeter to get this tightened down. Okay, that's put back on. So again, plug, bottom hose here, that's just underneath it, and 10 millimeter for the clamp. Now it's to go ahead and get the box on, and we'll get the battery reconnected and get this baby started. Okay, so it's put back on again. There you have the 10 millimeter for the clamp. Then you have those little tiny bolts right there. There's 5 of them that go around the intake box on this top part, and get those tightened down. Those are 8 millimeters, and then you have this hose, and she's all put back together. Last but not least, we have the battery. So start with the positive first, put that on first, get that tightened, and then work on the negative last. Once we have that,